All right, we're not fooling around anymore. No more goofing off, no more social life, no more interrupting cats. It's time to start writing. So now that I've wasted your time for about 4 episodes, we're actually going to do some writing. So today I'm going to kind of take you through my writing process. This is what has worked well for me. This is what I've learned from other writers. This is what I do to kind of make the process fun and interesting. I'm going to go through and kind of talk you through how I write. So, what is the first thing I do? First thing I do is abandon all hope. So we're going to write that down. So that's step one. So step two is free writing. And this is a very common writing technique. Just about every composition class you'll ever take will teach you about free writing. And what you do is you sit down for a set amount of time and you just write as much as possible until your hand basically falls off. You don't try not to think about it too much. Try not to stop. Try not to stop and going, just write. Doesn't matter what it is, right? It could be a joke, it could be a visual, it could be a line of dialogue, an idea, a character, an insult, whatever it is. And just give yourself a set amount of time. I like to do it for about 10 minutes. There might be some conflicting theories out there about what is a good amount of time to do this. I find about 10 minutes works for me. I'm able to get a lot out of that. So that is the first thing that we're going to do. So after I do my free write, then at that point I like to kind of fine tune the free writing that I did. So at that point I condense. I will go through what I wrote and I kind of just throw out the stuff that was just kind of stray thoughts, things that I don't think really are going to go anywhere. And I kind of like cherry pick the things that excite me the most in the free write. The stuff that I'm like, that's most intriguing. Oh, I like that idea the most. I think I can get some good writing out of that. I'll just kind of go through and kind of pick out the stuff that is most exciting. And then I kind of build upon that from there. So that's the next thing I'm going to do. So what I did was I took my free write and I kind of handpicked a couple of things from it that I liked most and that I thought would be most interesting to write about. After that, I restructure. So I take the handful of things that I took from my free write that I'm most interested in write about, and I kind of restructure them. I try to kind of boil them down to one sentence or one idea, at least just to kind of get started. So the first is what depression would look like. So I was playing around with the idea of like emotions, anxiety, depression, mental health, and what if they took like a physical form? If you could pull them out of your brain and see what they looked like, what they would look like, what form they would take, if you will. So from there, the other idea I got was pathways in the brain. So when I was talking to my therapist a few sessions ago, She talked about doing activities, and she mentioned how doing certain things opens up different pathways in the brain. So from there, the writer in me kind of got this idea of like the brain having paths open up and seeing that in a physical form. You know, you're in your brain and there's paths that open up depending on certain experiences or certain trials or certain successes, and kind of seeing that in a physical form of sorts. So here's the next thing I came up with. I came up with a freed genie goes to a resort and meets other freed genies. Because we know the genies, we know Aladdin. The person gets the lamp, they make the 3 wishes, the genie's free, yada yada yada. But genies are so interesting to me. They spend these long periods in these claustrophobic spaces, and then they're free, and it's like whatever. And they always want to tell a story about this cautionary tale of be careful what you wish for, but I'm like, I don't care. I just want to see what the genie can do. This is a guy that can make wishes and was like shrunk down into a small space for a long period of time. I want to know his story. So I had an idea of like, what if when the genie's free, we follow the genie around and see what his life is like now that he's not a slave anymore. I thought maybe he goes to this retreat where he meets other genies, and we learn what it's like to be a genie and kind of what they might be up to now that they don't have to be in a lamp or making wishes for their master anymore. So I thought it might be kind of a fun idea. So now that I've got a handful of ideas from my free write, now it's basically just time to write. Actually write. So in this case, what I normally do is I just kind of go with my gut. I just pick an idea that is most interesting in the moment to write about. So I just kind of pick the one that I'm like, I kind of want to write about that right now. So now that I basically kind of know what I'm going to write, the next step is, well, it's just to write, basically. I've got something to work with now, that I've done my free write, that I fine-tuned it, I condensed it, I restructured it. So now I can just sit down and kind of come up with a rough draft, if you will. So at that point, for me, it's just getting together as much of a rough draft as I can get together. I try not to rewrite too much. I try not to chisel the rough draft too much. I try to just sit down and get something written, any kind of rough draft. It probably sucks, but it's a rough draft. That's the idea, is you're just getting something written. Nobody turns in their rough draft and, well, no, students do that. Nobody turns in their rough draft or their first draft and says, all right, here's my book. Actually, I think Stephanie Meyer does that. Nobody turns in their first draft and says, well, I guess James Patterson probably does that because he writes a new book every 45 minutes, so he doesn't really have time for another draft. Okay, so there's exceptions to this, but basically the point is, generally speaking, you don't just turn in your rough draft and say, okay, Scholastic, here's my book. You have to kind of write a crappy piece of writing for a while. It's almost like writing an F paper, and your job is to slowly but surely turn that into an A paper. That is my writing process, and I hope it's helpful to you. And now that I've gotten everything together, I think we're going to do some actual writing. So any subscribing or liking is appreciated if you enjoyed the content, and I will see you next week for more Writer's Block.